Busy Friday, lots of things going on. You know the drill. Questions into the chat. I have a couple of updates. None of them are actually very good. So the data from Israel on the fourth shot, not good. Doesn't protect. Doesn't add any additional boosting potential. Unfortunately. So if anybody is interested, actually, I'm just gonna post. I'm just gonna post that in a chat. And by the way, all of this now, quick updates like this are kudos to Dr. DeMacher, Sharon DeMacher, who hopefully will be with us as a facilitator soon. So she's sending me the summaries, and I'm grateful for that, because honestly, looking for stuff nowadays always takes time. So I'll put that in. So if you have grandkids, WHO just came out with recommendations not to boost kids because of the lack of any information on benefits. Okay, so what's coming into the chat is first the Israeli data that just got released, and then I'll put WHO recommendation there as well. So, and by the way, that was recommendation for healthy children and adults. It is healthy children and adolescent. It is not for kids who have any medical problems in terms of not giving them boosters. And then some good news. I don't want to end short time on the bad news. It looks like that the government's getting a little bit better to get more masks and to do more home tests. So those of you who doesn't know, now in addition to our local systems, like Montgomery County has its own kits and N95 program, N95 mask program. But apparently, starting now, all American households can get up to 4 rapid tests from government directly. So what I'll do is I will put a link to that. It's called covidtest.gov. So I'll put the link in there, and you literally just order it online, and then they'll drop it off at your house by just UPS, USPS. So that's the third. If you look at the chat, that's the third thing I just put in there. So those are my updates. I do have an advertisement plug, so I'll put the advertisement plug in now and then at the end too. So on Sunday, this is International Integrative Medicine Day, IIM Day, which is kind of exciting despite what's going on. But this International Integrative Medicine Day goes back about a decade. It was a result of 3 of us getting a little drunk at one of the integrative medicine conferences and say, hey, there's a day for everything. Why is there no integrative medicine day? We said, that's it. And it's 1, 2, 3. So January 23, that's why it's that particular day. So we don't have anything major planned this year for obvious reasons, but I kind of decided let's just do a little bit get together. So on this Sunday from 11 to 1, what we're going to do, I'm going to put a link to the full description of the program with the Zoom link in the chat right now. You have to click on this because it's a MailChimp campaign. So you have to click it to get there. So at 11 o'clock, we're going to do a Sufi healing service. And I will give you, after Leigh's talk today, I will give you a little bit of kind of a preview of that today. So we could definitely call it a mind-body practice. It has a little bit of a breathing techniques. It also has a little bit of attunement to elements and prayers. And they're in English, don't worry. I'm not going to make you recite Arabic. That's not what I do. I mean, there are some orders that I'm sure do that. And then we're not going to go through the names, but on Sunday we will. So if you have somebody you want to put for a prayer list, in essence, that's what it is. By all means, email me or come and say the name of your loved one. That's that first 45 minutes. And then we're just going to keep it open, and anybody who comes, we're going to have CIM old and new practitioners. You can ask them whatever questions you want. It could be COVID-related questions. It's meet and greet. Every new person is going to have a couple of minutes just to talk about what they do. Other than that, I don't know, maybe it's a little too early for a glass of wine on Sunday at 1 o'clock, but if it's not, well, I guess for our New Zealand colleagues, God knows what time that is, right? So anybody welcome. If you want to have somebody else come in, just forward them Zoom link. It's partially celebration of the day, partially just awareness, partially if you feel like you need more support and more time. I do ask you don't bring your personal questions unless you want to chat them to a practitioner individually, like you chat them to me, that's fine. But we don't want to bring complex clinical problems for the group to hear. That would not be appropriate. But if it's a generic question, or if it's a question without particular name and you're asking something overall, by all means, that's free time for you to come and ask more questions, meet more practitioners. So yeah, so that's my plug, and off to the questions for next 5 minutes before I hand it over to Leigh. I don't see any questions. That's nice. On the topic of vitamins and herbs, any that are recommended to be stopped prior to routine medical procedures? That's a great question, not COVID related. You all know that if you go to see a surgeon, the surgeon will tell you stop all the vitamins. It's a very bad statement because some vitamins are very good before surgery, especially zinc, vitamin C. The problem is that often surgeons or people who do the procedure, doctors who do procedure, don't really know which one's supposed to be stopped and which not. So you get a kind of a blank stop everything. Fish oil traditionally has been stopped because there's a concern for blood thinning effect. That's one I probably would stop. There is very minor other concerns. Beyond the fish oil, I can't really think of any uniform, like you have to stop certain things. There are some other blood thinning nutrients, so they're very uncommon, but I'll mention few. Lambrokinase, which is a natural blood thinner, and also nattokinase and serrapeptase, so those three, but they are not very commonly used. So, but they definitely need to be stopped. They're closer to aspirin in their strength of blood thinning. Yeah, so some people, I agree. So if somebody asks me, how essential is it to stop fish oil? I don't actually think it's really essential. I think if your dose is not very high, you're going to be fine. You're not going to, it's sort of the same if people ask me, what about garlic? Should I stop eating garlic, 1 clove a day? No, I mean, the blood thinning effect of those nutrients is so small per those particular standard doses that it's extremely unlikely to contribute to severe bleeding. So, but surgeons get particular and they get overexcited about this topic, and you don't want them to be pissed and say, we're canceling surgery because you're taking fish oil, right? That would be not a good situation. So yeah, so I don't think that the boosters for kids are coming. I actually think we're not even going to see the 4th booster potentially, not at least until their Pfizer or whatever Moderna comes out with the Omicron specific booster. Notice I didn't talk about BA2, which is the new subvariant of Omicron. I think it's too early. I think we need to talk about it when we know a bit more, but it is spreading, especially in Europe. So it doesn't seem to be any worse than the first one. It's just a different variant with different mutations. There's seemingly lack of awareness or lack of concern that it's worse than the first one. Cecile asked me a particular direct question, but I'll address it to everybody. I think it's fair. Can you talk about supplemental vitamin D3? I take Solgar, which is the only one I could find made from fish liver oil. So, okay, I think there's a confusion here. So almost all the vitamin D that you're buying yourself from Whole Foods, Whole Paycheck or whatever, they are D3. the D2 are prescription strength, and it's not actually as easy to find it anymore. It used to be many years ago that there was some D2 on the market. Most of it is D3 now. I even stopped paying.
Can I just interject?
Sure.
That is true unless you are looking for a vegan supplement. Unfortunately, the ones that are vegan are often V2.
Aha. Okay, so that means that D3 is made out of fish oil, I'm presuming, correct? Or some kind of animal source.
Yeah, sometimes it's taken from animal sources, though it can be synthetically made. So I don't really understand why this is the case. I think it's just a cost-benefit ratio for the vegan supplements.
Okay. So, Cecile, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us if that's enough info?
Hi, thank you. Let me go get my bottle. I'll be right back.
Okay, there you go. That's good. So the bottle should say, I mean, I think it's a low requirement for the bottle to say which form of D is it. But I will tell you, if like almost every bottle I ever get my hands on is D3.
My question was about where the where the D3 comes from. This one comes. My label's going to be backwards in your screen because I'm mirroring myself. But the ingredients are cod, haddock, and pollock, and it says ingredients fish liver oil, but from 3 different fishes. But other bottles that I was looking at, which might, if this is not expensive anyway, but other bottles that I were looking at all listed plants as the source. None of them mentioned fish.
Yeah, I don't know. Leigh is probably a better person to answer that. Or our favorite New Zealand.
I'm not personally overly concerned about the source of it, as long as it's D3. But what I'm hearing you say is that yours is coming in a fish oil, which is kind of a nice thing, right? You're getting your fish oil supplement and your D3 together, and you need that fat to absorb the vitamin D3. So that sounds like a good thing to have. But you could potentially get one that doesn't have oil in it, right? That it's just a powder, and then take your fish oil separately, particularly if we're worried about cost, because while Celgar is a great product, I know that is not the least expensive version of vitamin D out there. And vitamin D is one of those ones that a lower quality, like a Nature Made or something that as long as it has a USP seal or a consumer lab seal on it, is going to be of the same caliber as something that's more expensive. So if you're going to spend money on anything, that wouldn't be the one I would say splurge on.
In terms of the cost of vitamin D, actually the cheapest version are the liquid forms. So there's a product, I think it's the Thorn has one, Orthomolecular has one, and literally the one bottle for like $30 will last you for a year, easy.
And vitamin D is very stable, so it can sit around.
Yeah, and why there's such a big difference between capsules and liquid, I don't understand. Usually it's smaller difference. All right, so let's just stop the questions because we're already kind of at 17 minutes here. So let's stop the question with Michael's last question, but I'm gonna say that, so we're talking about the 4th booster. I don't think even seniors will need a 4th booster, at least right now, because Israeli experience has been, they don't add anything, literally. They're not protective on top as much as you would want. And they haven't stopped the spread. So it's a sort of, they did this unfortunate experiment for the rest of the world, and thank them for that. Should you get rid of the ones with soybean oil? So I guess let's transition straight to Dr. Frame, have her answer that question and give us today's wellness part.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's not a lot of nutritional value in soybean oil. And according to the talk that we had yesterday with the cross-disciplinary seminar series, which we'll put again in the chat for everyone who missed it, that's not a particularly healthy fat. And there's also the potential that those fats are bringing things with them that are unintended, because a lot of the soybeans even in the US are really not grown for human consumption. And so their regulatory qualities are much lower, and that's also a concern. We were just having this conversation yesterday. So I would say, yes, skip the one that's got the soybean oil in it. Look for one that either has a healthier fat or one that has no fat at all, and then take that with your meal that has fat in it, peanut butter, whatever you're having that's got some fat in it, or with a fish oil. And then I will transition to my talk. So that was a good transition. Let me share my handout, which you will all have access to, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. And I'm gonna get bigger so everybody can see it, including myself. We're going to talk about lifestyle for prevention of cognitive decline and dementia, which I know this group already probably knows a lot about just because you hang out with Dr. Kogan, who knows all about this subject. But a recent study came out that really kind of put all of this into context, and I thought it'd be helpful for me to go through and give you the 411 on what the study said. And then I have the citation for the study at the bottom for those of you who want more information. Just a bit of background, cognitive decline is actually the chief cause of disability globally, which I don't think everybody really fully understands. So the number one cause of disability globally is cognitive decline. So this is something we all need to worry about. Even if it's something that maybe doesn't run in your family, we really all need to be worried about this. And globally, 47 million people have dementia. So if it's not you, it's probably a loved one who will be affected by it. And so thus all of us improving our diet is a good idea. And this one actually really astonished me. 8 million new diagnoses annually. So 8 million new people are being diagnosed with cognitive decline every single year. And many of those diagnoses are actually preventable, or at the very least, we can delay them by improving lifestyle. So that's what we're going to talk about. Most common forms, the ones you probably heard of, they're Alzheimer's disease. There's also vascular dementia and what's called a mixed form, where they kind of don't know exactly where it fits. And from my time at the National Institute of Neurodegenerative Diseases, there's a lot more than what we know. The ones that we know are just convenient groups that we've put together, and they actually are going to end up being broken up into smaller groups. But luckily, in terms of lifestyle, exactly what disease we're talking about doesn't really matter. It's all the same. If you want to improve your brain health, if you want to prevent cognitive decline, we're going to do the same thing. So that's something that is very fantastic about this. Currently, there's no treatment for these diseases. So really, this preventative lifestyle is the way to go. And what we want to focus on is what can we do and what has been done. And in the clinical trials, what we've seen is the best way is to have what we call a multi-component intervention. So we don't just change diet, we don't just do cognitive training, we don't just do increased physical activity, we do all of those things. And time again, those seem to be the most beneficial. And what is that? Well, that's really an integrative approach to lifestyle. So that's what we're talking about every week. Shouldn't be new to any of you. So hopefully this will just help reinforce the things you're already doing. So who should be most concerned about this? Really anyone with a brain, anyone who eats. But the increased risk happens as we age. Some people do have genetic predispositions. People of lower socioeconomic status, though I would argue a lot of that is really due to lifestyle factors. And those are things that we can control. So what can we control? The environment and lifestyle. The things we're really going to focus on today are nutrition and physical activity, which are probably things you are all already working on, but we can always use a reminder of what we should be striving for. So in terms of preventing, this is the question I get all the time. What superfood should I be eating, right? Or what 2 or 3 things should I be eating for brain health? And I'd like to make it very clear that there's no silver bullet food or even nutrient for brain health. And it's really true of health in general, because your body needs all of these nutrients, and it needs generally a large variety of different foods in order to get those nutrients. And if you remember my gut microbiome talk, one of the number one things I point out is that we need a diversity of diet with a lot of different kinds of plants. So if we're trying to feed all of us, including our microbiome, it's really about this diversity of diet, not any single food. So if someone's trying to sell you a superfood, and you enjoy it, good, eat it occasionally, but it's not going to be the cure for cognitive decline. And the way we eat is actually similar for cardiovascular disease to brain health. And I think that also drives home the fact that we're really talking about general health here, right? It's about supporting your body, all of it, your whole body, your brain, your heart, your skin, your gut, all of that. So it's not just that one nutrient that's going to be important for your brain. And so what do we want to talk about when we talk about diet? We want to talk about dietary patterns. And the one you've probably heard of, and it's the most researched, is the Mediterranean diet. So that's a dietary pattern that has been really well studied for a very long time. And it's generally considered to be good for health and disease prevention. And experts consistently rank it number 1. for the dietary pattern. So the US News ranking for diets, as long as I've been reading it, which has been for decades, it's been #1. So there's a good reason to look at the Mediterranean diet. And I've got a link here for you to learn more about that. But let's talk about the research. So obviously it's good for general health, but we've also seen that it's associated with slower cognitive decline and reduced Alzheimer's disease risk. That's pretty good. We really can't ask for more than that, a good association, but association doesn't necessarily mean causation. So that's not a super strong relationship, but in terms of dietary patterns, often that's the strongest relationship we're gonna see. What else do we know? People with Alzheimer's disease are less likely to follow a Mediterranean style diet. Okay, that's interesting. High adherence to the Mediterranean diet has been shown to lower cognitive decline by 33%. Okay, now I'm getting excited, right? So now people are starting a Mediterranean diet and it's slowing their cognitive decline. That's interesting. The Mediterranean diet also outperformed a low-fat diet at preventing cardiovascular events, which are actually a risk factor for cognitive decline. Okay, I wouldn't have recommended a low-fat diet. Probably none of you are on a low-fat diet anymore. We've gotten past that, but it's good to know that it's better than some other diet. But what I love about the Mediterranean is it's more than just a diet. It's actually a lifestyle. It's about physical activity, social engagement, cooking, preferably with friends and family, getting enough rest, giving yourself time to recharge. And all of those are also associated with slower cognitive decline. So if you put the Mediterranean style diet together with this lifestyle, it's kind of a panacea really for health. But what does that look like? So here's a great pyramid to follow. Speaking of pyramids we were talking about earlier, the Mediterranean diet pyramid is a really great one to look at. And you'll see it includes things that most nutritional pyramids do not, like move, get out there, move your body, enjoy meals with others, drink water. That's your beverage of choice, and maybe wine in moderation, particularly if you're having a glass of wine with a friend and really enjoying it. But basically it's eating a lot of the good stuff, lots of plants, a large variety, getting fish and seafood, some poultry, eggs and cheese, and then limited meats and sweets. So nothing is off limits. We don't exclude anything, but you just limit them. You know, you have your occasional sweet, really enjoy it, but most of the time you're getting your sweets down here in your fruits. So that is the Mediterranean diet. What other diets will we think about? So another one we think about would be the DASH diet, the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So this diet was specifically designed to stop hypertension, not cognitive decline, but hypertension and cardiovascular disease are risk factors for cognitive decline. So we could see that maybe this might have some effect. It's actually often compared to the Mediterranean diet because it's similar. And they are both associated with reduced cognitive decline. However, that evidence for DASH is a little bit weaker, partly because DASH is a newer diet. So what is DASH? It's not that different from Mediterranean diet. We look here, this one has more whole grains in it, and it's also more prescriptive, right? So in the previous pyramid, all of the plants were kind of lumped together in one group, like get a lot of these plants, but exactly which ones didn't matter. Here, DASH is being more prescriptive. Okay, every day you want all of these grains and all of these vegetables and all of these fruits. That maybe is a little bit too strict in my book, but it's could be a helpful guide for you. Really limit your dairy. Now they recommend fat-free or low-fat dairy, which is definitely debatable, and that's not specified in Mediterranean diet. So there's another difference. But here you have emphasis on nuts, seeds, and legumes. That's also in a Mediterranean diet. Some lean proteins. They don't have that heavy reliance on fish that the Mediterranean diet does. They give you a little bit more choice. That may work better for you, but it maybe perhaps is not quite as good for health. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And again, limiting your sweets and sugar sweetened beverages. What else would we want to talk about? And this is the one that I really get excited about. So this is the MIND diet, the Med Diet Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. Not a great name, but MIND diet is good. And basically it's the Mediterranean diet plus the DASH diet. They kind of put them both in there into one diet, and they've done quite a bit of research on them. And it was specifically designed to support brain function and cognitive decline. And they took the findings from the Mediterranean diet and the findings from the DASH diet and combined them by pulling out the most neuroprotective elements. So this one's super focused and maybe is a little bit easier to think about. And it's also plant forward or plant-based. All of these diets really are plant forward or plant-based. They're emphasizing vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, legumes, healthy fats, fish and poultry, and avoiding red meat, sweets, processed food, sugar sweetened beverages. We can all get behind that general guide. But how good is MIND really? So the MIND diet is neuroprotective according to a growing body of evidence. So this is an even younger diet than DASH, so there's less evidence out there. However, the evidence looks really good for it. And one other thing that is popping out that the MIND diet has been finding is it's really crucial to avoid overconsumption of alcohol. While there is some benefits to consuming wine, we really want to limit the amount. And it looks to be, so when we're defining overconsumption, we're saying greater than 14 drinks per week. And that's in general, but I would say that's probably less than in women. The recommendations for women are really 1 drink a day or less, ideally. So that's going to be a really crucial limit. So if you are enjoying your wine, make sure you're really enjoying that 1 glass because you can't have a lot of it or some of the benefits go away. But what else does the MIND diet do? So in the research study conducted on the MIND diet, we found those who strictly followed the MIND diet, they had a 53% decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. That's huge, right? All we're talking about is diet and lifestyle. This is not a medication, 53%. But what if you're not great at always following a type of dietary pattern? Well, even those who moderately followed it, they still had a 35% decreased chance of Alzheimer's disease. I'd take that. That sounds pretty good. So how do we do it? And this is part of the reason I think the MIND diet actually works, is it's really simple. There are 10 foods that you focus on. You focus on green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, so maybe your starchy vegetables, berries, fish, wine, olive oil, nuts, whole grains, poultry, and beans. So that's where the majority of your calories are going to come from. And what does that look like on a typical week? Every day you're going to have some sort of salad. It could be a heated salad, could be a cool salad, but it's going to be full of lots of vegetables. And then you have to have at least 1 other vegetable that day. They're going to recommend 3 servings of whole grains, which is less than half of what the DASH recommends. So that's one of the things I also like about MIND is we probably want to limit the amount of whole grains. They're good for us, but you don't want to eat a ton of them. So 3 is probably about right. And then you have that 1 glass of wine per day. Most days you're going to snack on nuts. I snack on nuts every day. I love nuts. They're a great source of healthy fat. They have protein. They're very filling. I think that's a great idea. So if you want to have them more than at once every other day, I say go for it. Just limit the amount because they can be higher in calories. Every other day have beans. Beans are about as close as it gets to a superfood in my book. I am very pro beans and they're inexpensive and easy to have on hand. So behind that one. Up to twice a week, poultry and berries. So poultry, if you like it, go for it. That sounds great. Berries, I have berries every single day. That's part of my breakfast routine. I love them. I think they're amazing. And I don't think that you can have too much of berries, to be honest. So if anything, I would say have more berries than this, but at minimum, twice per week have berries. And then once per week have fish. I would say maybe once or twice a week, depending on what your interests are in terms of seafood, is probably a good goal. But really once is probably enough. And then over here, this is what we want to avoid. But nothing is completely off limits. But you don't want to have a lot of red meat, butter, definitely not margarine, sweets, cheese, pastries, fried and fast foods. That's probably pretty intuitive. Most of you would have probably guessed that if we had just had that conversation. So it's pretty open, and I think it's something that you can all apply in your life. So something to think about the MIND diet for prevention of cognitive decline. And the other 2 pieces I just want to touch on real quickly is physical activity. I've talked about that before. That's natural movement plus exercise. You don't have to go to the gym to get your physical activity. You don't have to do it in 60-minute groups. It could be a 5-minute walk, taking the stairs. Very simple things, making sure you're getting that natural movement. And a couple other things just as a reminder, which we should probably do talks on these separately, but restorative sleep, getting enough sleep lets your brain rest, lets your brain heal, very important. And then that social engagement piece, which I think I've kind of driven home. We all need to be engaged, and we are doing that right now during this talk. And I will go ahead and stop sharing and we can take some questions. Yeah, and Mark brought up about coffee. I debated whether to put coffee in there because I didn't want to talk about superfoods, but there is some research showing that a cup or even a few cups of coffee may be beneficial. But interestingly enough, a lot of that research shows that it's probably the polyphenols that are beneficial, and this is really, it pops out in the literature because most people don't eat a polyphenol rich diet. They don't eat a lot of plants. So they're getting like 90% of their polyphenols from that cup of coffee in the morning for the average American. So that's part of the reason that coffee comes out time and time again as being protective, is because it's like one of the only healthy things that people on a Western diet are having. But everybody in this room, I think, is having polyphenols in many different forms. So if you don't like coffee, I wouldn't be worried about that.
Leigh, there's a frame about the serving size. Did you address that?
No, I didn't see that one.
What
is the serving? So servings actually change depending on what item you're talking about, right? Like, so it's different than beans than it is than vegetables. But typically we're thinking about a cup. So a cup of vegetables is a serving. It's probably going to be like a half a cup of beans. For protein, we're talking a deck of cards. So it does vary, but I will tell you the serving size you're getting at a restaurant is not a serving size. It's going to be at least half whatever you're getting at a restaurant.
All right, there's a lot of questions actually. So there's a question about the eggs and how many are safe to eat, and whether it's better to have duck eggs versus chicken eggs.
So I can't speak to duck eggs versus chicken eggs, but there's been quite a bit of recent research actually on eggs, and showing that they are indeed beneficial. And even if you have up to I think it was 2 eggs a day, adding that to a vegetarian diet even was beneficial. So, and that was looking also at the gut microbiome, which would be something we might be concerned about. So I definitely don't worry too much about eggs, particularly if you're getting them from a local farmer. That would be amazing. Or if you're getting, organic cage-free eggs, those are a very healthy source of protein, also a great source of choline and other things that you don't maybe get from other areas in your diet. So I don't worry too much about eggs. Try to avoid those CAFO eggs though.
Let me add choline, because it comes up a lot. So choline is basically a block out of acetylcholine, which is the main memory neurotransmitter. So if you don't have enough choline in your diet, you're gonna have actually worse cognition because you don't make enough acetylcholine. There's been studies done on that, and diets high in choline seem to fare substantially better. And Dr. Frame covered all that already, but this is just particularly about the eggs, because eggs is a very good source of choline. Not the only source by any means, but one of the good sources.
Correct. Yeah. And that study I was looking at with the 2 eggs, that was one of the things they really pointed out, is it can be difficult to get enough choline on a vegetarian diet. So adding in the eggs is a great way to ensure you're getting that. See Jennifer's question about cheese. So one of the concerns about cheese is it's very easy to overconsume cheese. It's very delicious, it's pretty high in fat, and it's yummy, and we just eat too much of it. So I think that's really more of the issue with cheese, rather than cheese inherently. The other thing is the type of cheese really makes a difference, right? Like if we're talking about a slice of processed American cheese, that's very different than a Parmigiano Reggiano. Like they shouldn't really be grouped into the same group, but unfortunately they are. And so when we're looking at these research projects, they're looking at all types of cheeses, right? So they're looking at people who are eating a Big Mac, and that's where they're getting their cheese. And that's not going to be the same as someone who's enjoying some Parmesan shaved on top of some beautifully roasted Brussels sprouts. So I wouldn't worry too much about cheese, but as with all things, in moderation, it is high in fat. Same thing with nuts. I mean, nuts are fantastic for you, but they can also be very caloric. So you don't want to eat, like, I would say no more than 2 handfuls of nuts a day, which is pretty generous, but that's a pretty good rule. If you're eating more than that, you're probably eating too many nuts and you're going to get too many calories. And the same is true with cheese. Just limit the amounts and buy a high quality cheese that you really enjoy, as opposed to just throwing cheese on there for the sake of making it cheesy.
Let's do 2 more questions and then we'll move to the mind-body part. So, opinion on a carbonated water, Dr.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's definitely some concern about carbonated water because it can be mineral leaching to your bones. And particularly your teeth, because you're washing it in that. But that being said, I'd rather see you drinking a Perrier than, say, I don't know, a 7-Up or a Coca-Cola. And if you put a little bit of fruit in it and you find that very appealing, I'm fine with it. I really am not going to get too worried, and particularly if you're having a healthy diet, because you're hopefully getting enough minerals to replace anything that you might have been depleting that with, particularly calcium and those types of things. And if you're taking your vitamin D, you're going to absorb your calcium. So it shouldn't be that much of an issue, but maybe you shouldn't drink it all day, every day.
All right, let's do last question. I know there are a few questions that are left unanswered, but I want to make sure we get a little bit of to practice. So choline in eggs, white or yellow?
In the yellow. And I'm very anti-egg whites because almost all the nutrition is in the yolk. So when you eat an egg white, you're basically just eating an albumin sandwich, right? Like there's nothing in that except for the little bit of protein that's left. So don't do egg whites. That was one of those low fat fads, and this is another reason the low fat diets are not healthy, because you end up eliminating a lot of the good nutritious elements of the diet. So yes, you can eat eggs. Up to 2 is definitely safe, perhaps more than that per day. And if you eat them, eat the whole egg.
All right. So with that, if you still have questions, by the way, hold them till next Friday, okay? Oh, actually, Dr. Frame, are you going to be here next Friday?
Good question. Probably.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
I'm taking a break because I'm actually giving a talk at the cannabis conference, so I won't be even next Friday. But okay, so let's center. Let's come to find a comfortable position. We're going to start with just a little bit of a breathing. Those of you who've been coming to this class regularly know this breathing already. We've done it a couple of times. It's called elemental breath. What we're doing is we are honoring each element, starting with the earth. If it helps you to close your eyes, so the inhale and exhale both are through the nose. Inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. And we connect through our feet to the earth, sensing how we are grounded, imagining the earth energy being brought into our body on inhale. And then when you exhale, you can imagine any physical impurities of our bodies being given back to the earth. We live, walk, do everything on our mother. So I think making sure that we honor earth as an element on a daily basis with this particular breath is a starting point for this practice. Okay, and let's take one more breath here, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. And we're going to move to the water breath, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. And this is a second cleansing breath. It's a water breath. And you can put your attention to the area in the middle of your belly, just under the belly button. Relaxing the belly with each inhale, and then with each exhale, letting muscles of the belly come back to the neutral. And here it helps to imagine being positioned in a body of water, whether it's a shower or a lake, a river, ocean, whatever your favorite natural body of water is. And we can think of water as a universal purifier, cleansing each of our cells, our tissues. And it's not random that Dr. Frame mentioned that we have to drink water in a plenty, because we are 60% by weight water. So this element is with us all the time. Let's do one more water breath. And then transition to fire, inhaling through the mouth, exhaling through the nose. And you can concentrate in the middle of your chest, imagining that we are using the fire of our heart to burn any emotional attachments that no longer serving us, letting them be burned and released with smoke and ashes, so to speak, on exhale. Inhaling through the mouth and exhaling through the nose. And the fire element is always with us as well. It's in any light object, in the sun. If you're like me, I love setting up fires in your fireplace, a wood stove. You may have a very special relationship with fire. And so adding this component of using fire as a cleansing source, as a way of releasing our emotional blocks, could be very valuable. And then we'll take one more fire breath and get ready to move to air. And air is inhaling and exhaling through the mouth. And air element is light, transparent, shallow in a way. So here we don't take deep breaths, just breathe very naturally without extra effort. And we can position our attention into the forefront of our foreheads, the mental plane. And here traditionally we try not to release quote unquote anything, but we just observe our thoughts, mental patterns that arise, thoughts that come to your mind. And without any judgment or attachment to them, you can just simply become an observer of your own thoughts. Just watch them as if they don't belong to you. They just come and they go, just like clouds in the sky, following the wind. Okay, good. And let's take one last air breath. And we will transition to a last one, ether breath. Ether is a summary of all other elements. And you can inhale and exhaling both through nose and mouth at the same time. And here the breath becomes very light, very not forced. And this element is at the core is our connection with greater. You can think of an area just above our crown right here, just above our heads. And think of what is your relationship with the divine, with greater, whatever you the language you're using? How is that channel of connection is for you? Are you happy with it? Is it open enough? And you may want to breathe in and out through it, letting this channel to be cleansed by the breath. And traditionally, after this practice, we would raise our hands and we would say a healing prayer. You probably don't know it, so I'll just say it and you can just listen. Beloved Lord, Almighty God, through the rays of the sun, through the waves of the air, through the all-pervading life in space, purify and revivify us, and we pray, heal our bodies, hearts, and souls. And what I thought I will do, we have a little bit more time, just to give you kind of a sense of how in Sufism healing services are organized and how they are practiced in a way. So the purification breath is kind of a core practice that helps to tune ourselves every day to our environment, to the elements around us. But then there are special, I guess we would call them pranayamas in yogic words, and in Sufism we call them zikr, or just a recalling or renaming the divine words that carry particular meaning. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little piece for you that comes as a part of the healing service. And I'll get us to a place where if you have someone you want to hold in your heart, by all means, I'll give a pause there. And then after that pause, we'll do a particular short zikr or short breathing with the divine names. O thou, the light of all souls, the life of all beings, the healer of our hearts, all-sufficient and all-powerful God, forgiver of our shortcomings, free us from all pain and suffering and make us thy instrument, that we may in turn free others from pain and suffering, and we may impart to them thy light, thy life, thy joy, and thy peace. And so here, if you have a name of a person that you want to hold in your heart that needs healing at the moment, or maybe it's you, or maybe it's a friend, just without opening your eyes, concentrate on this person for a couple of minutes with just a basic regular breath. We have to make sure that when we asking for the healing, that we don't really put our intent on it. We're simply saying that we know that someone is in need of feeling better, and we are asking the greater to take care of this person. It doesn't have to be a person, it could be an animal, a group of people, a town, a physical location, part of nature. And so here we recite internally. So what we do is there are two words. So first word is Shafi, and the spelling is, if you care, Shaffee, and that translates as a healing power of God. And then that's on inhale. So this practice can be done silent, and we will do it silently internally. So we inhale Shafi like this. And then we exhale coffee, K-A-F-E-E, which is the all-pervading life of God. So in essence, we're asking the divine to invoke the healing power. So Shafi, coffee. And we do this 5 times. So inhaling Shafi, exhaling coffee. O thou, the healer of our bodies, hearts, and souls, by thy mercy, may they be healed by thy all-sufficient power of healing. And usually here we would close by kind of concentrating on that inner state that we've generated, sensing the energy of the practice, sensing our internal comfort and peace, and we'll close it by inhaling, bringing our hands up, gathering the energy, and exhaling slowly down. And then doing it 2 more times. Inhale up. Exhaling down. And then 1 more time. And put your hands right over the belly button. No particular sequence. You can have right over left or left over right. Just keep your eyes closed for a few seconds and tune into your body. See if there's any messages that you need to remember. Maybe there's some revelation that occurred during this short practice that you need to write down or remember. This is the end of this part. What I'll do is, if you want to know more about this, so I'm going to put again the link into the chat. And some of you may have gotten the email that I set up. And if you haven't, you can just copy paste this into the browser or save it as a chat. And on Sunday at 11 o'clock, we'll do this service in much more detail with a bit longer meditative practice in the beginning. The service takes totally about 45 minutes. And we do this service every Sunday. And this is not coincidence that we're opening it to a wider public, not just to people who are interested in this particular lineage. So we're opening up starting this Sunday, and you can come every Sunday at 11 o'clock if you want. You don't have to come every week. You can come whenever you want. You can also send me the names without coming, and then we'll make sure that we will put the names together with other names that are sent to us every week. And names can be repeated as many times as needed. This is all, the structure is there to support and support as much as needed. We started doing this service on a weekly basis with a small group of people I work with in this particular lineage. Now the whole service is in this format, so it doesn't use any particular esoteric language beyond what I said. So if that's too much for you, I understand if it's not too much for you, then there's no more than this. It's just a little simple. It goes longer because there are other parts of attunement and alignment so that we're preparing to give our best concentration to the practice. I think the power in this service lays in our personal capacity to become a best channel for healing we can be. And it doesn't matter what profession you're in. We all have this capacity to have an empathic connection, and through that potentiate the internal healing of each person. So,
Misha, is there a link for the 1-2-3 day event on the CIM website?
It is, but the one I gave you is the same, but let me try to see what Angela put on the CIM webpage. I have not actually reviewed it. Oh yeah, it's right there. So I'm gonna give you guys a link. Thank you, Janet, for bringing this up. So yeah, so you can access it from different places.
That was actually Luann.
Oh, thank you, Len. Well, actually on this page, I don't see a link to Zoom. So use the link that I sent, and actually, let me just put the Zoom link only without, and this is an, oops. Oh, it wouldn't copy, huh? Okay, so use the link that I put in for the MailChimp campaign, because the link to Zoom is inside. If you forget, and if you're on a Facebook, go to GWCIM Facebook account. Do like us if you haven't, and you can find it there. Hope we'll see some of you there. Otherwise, wonderful weekend. Shockingly, we ended exactly at 3 o'clock. Thank you, Dr. Frame, for a very enlightening conversation. I know there's a lot of questions left, so I hope you guys can bring them to us in the next week or two. We're disabled from saving or copying chat. Huh.
Yeah, I think the participants can't do that. There's some setting. It changed about, I don't know, a while ago. I mean, we get the chat in the messages, but we can't do it ourselves.
Well, how about this, everybody? I'll be managing this all myself, so I'm gonna put email in the chat. That should be easy to just write down.
And I can also put the link in the email that I'm going to send out in a few hours.
Perfect. Thank you, Janet. Do you have the actual link to the campaign?
Probably because I'm the only person that can download the chat. So it's in the chat, right?
It is. I also will personally email it to you right now.
Okay.
Less work for you. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you and bye.
Bye, thank you.